Good morning. Welcome to Clearwater County's special meeting for today, Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021. As a reminder, all public meetings are live streamed and recorded. Any verbal or written information provided may be included in public documents as per the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, FOIP 41. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 10:31. If everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda, any additions? If none, looking for somebody to adopt the agenda. Councillor Lougheed, those in favor? Due to some of the sensitivity of the conversations, we are going to go into a closed session for a period of time, and then we will come out and make the appropriate motions. So looking for somebody to motion to go into closed session. Deputy Reeve Vandermeer, those in favor? That is carried, and that is 10. All right. If we're good to go. It is 11:04 and we are returning from a closed session back to open session. And we're going to back up and have a conversation with regard to solid waste agreements. Mr. Hagan?
Thank you, Reeve Laird. I suggest this is a good day for Clearwater County and for the region as a whole. What you have before you, and as discussed in the closed session, are 4 draft agreements related to waste management. These agreements reflect the transition of waste management within the region to a somewhat more independent approach by the municipalities as opposed to the former Regional Waste Authority, which operated as a joint venture between the town of Rocky Mountain House, Clearwater County, and the village of Caroline. These 4 agreements, and it was deliberate to split them into separate agreements because of the unique nature of each of the agreements. The first dealing with the distribution of the net assets of the former joint venture. All 3 municipalities jointly controlled that operation and were partners in that. And what that agreement outlines and provides detail and direction on is how those assets are to be dissolved as of December 31st, 2020, which is effectively the end date of the operation, and distributed amongst the 3 parties, also recognizing agreement as to ongoing liability for closure and post-closure obligations related to the landfill. From this point on, Clearwater County will continue to operate the landfill, but recognizing that all 3 municipalities were partners up until the end of December of 2020. The second agreement deals specifically with the closed industrial cells that are within the landfill and outlines the agreed to contributions by each municipality going forward with respect to leachate management related to those cells. Both of those agreements are between all 3 municipalities. The next 2 agreements are specifically between the town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County. The first of those being a regional waste agreement going forward, which outlines the tipping fees and charges respectively for the operation, outlines the transfer stations and the responsibility of each municipality to operate the respective transfer stations, and as well deals with the restoration of the current Rocky Mountain House transfer site. The last agreement relates to a closed municipal landfill, and again, this is between the town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County, and that outlines the ongoing responsibilities respective of that facility between the 2 municipalities. Administration is recommending that council follow the recommendation coming from the negotiation committee. Negotiation committee for all 3 municipalities together have spent many hours discussing the provisions of these agreements. And again, I think this is a good day. We've reached a point, the committee's reached a point where they're recommending that each council approve each of these agreements. And I will turn it back to you, Reeve Laird.
Just to confirm, Mr. Hagan, I believe that the process for this week is our council today is having a special meeting to have this discussion. My understanding is later this afternoon, the town council is having their meeting to go through the same, very similar process. And Thursday is the village council will go through the process for the net asset distribution agreement and the closed industrial cell cost sharing and liability agreement. So, and then that will be followed by, my understanding, should everybody approve this process, that we would be signing in a joint initiative on Friday morning on April the 23rd at 11 o'clock via live stream. And our council has offered up our council chambers and as a host for the event.
That's correct, Reeve Laird. And support of that, our communications area will be working with the town and the county to coordinate a joint press release for Friday as well, celebrating the signature of these agreements plus the other ones we're going to discuss today.
And I imagine we'll be reaching out to the village as well.
We will.
Perfect. Any questions with regard to these 4 agreements or comments? It is a great day. It's good to have this, this accomplishment. So if there's none, you'll see on page 2 of 166, there are 4 motions that we're looking to make. We'll motion each one of these agreements separately to ensure that we have clarity. So the first one is that council approves Clearwater County entering into the town of Rocky Mountain House, Village of Caroline and Clearwater County Net Asset Distribution Agreement effective January 1st, 2021, and authorizes execution by signature of Reeve and interim CAO. Who would like to make that motion? Deputy Reeve? Deputy Reeve Vandermeer. Those in favor? That is carried 7-0. The second motion is that council approves Clearwater County entering into the town of Rocky Mountain House, Village of Caroline, and Clearwater County closed industrial sales cost sharing and liability agreement effective January 1st, 2021, authorizes execution by signature of Reeve and interim CAO. Councillor Lang, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? That is also carried, 7-0. The other 2 remaining solid waste agreements are between the town and the county. So the third motion is that council approves Clearwater County entering into the town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Regional Solid Waste Services Agreement effective January 1st, 2021, and authorizes execution by signature of Reeve and interim CAO. Any questions or comments? Councillor Swanson? So moved. Those in favor? That is carried 7-0. Last but not least, closed municipal landfill cost sharing and liability agreement. You will find that motion on page 3 of 166. That council approves Clearwater County entering into the town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County closed municipal landfill cost sharing and liability agreement effective January 1st, 2021, and authorizes execution by signature of Reeve and interim CAO. Councillor Duncan? Those in favor? That is carried 7-0. That is great news. We'll be happy to share that. That brings us to 3.2, Clearwater County Town of Rocky Mountain House Draft Community Support Services Agreement. Mr. Hagan, perhaps you could lead us on that.
Thank you, Reeve Laird. In addition to the 4 waste agreements that council just discussed, the negotiation committee also had discussions with the town of Rocky Mountain House specific to this new agreement. The spirit of this agreement is in recognition of the services that the town and the county both provide for various community-related properties that for which they are exempt from property taxation. Property tax is the chief source of funding for each of these municipalities to provide services to those properties. Without that funding, the municipalities need to absorb those costs somewhere. So much of the discussion surrounded a recognition of these exempt properties. And again, to be specific, these aren't related necessarily to the services provided on any of those properties, but rather I should say by the agencies occupying those properties, but rather the services surrounding the properties. So snow plowing, street maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, those kind of things that the municipalities still need to provide. So what this agreement recognizes and outlines is that despite the fact, and much of this is covered in the preamble and whereas clauses of this agreement, despite the fact that the county and the town enjoy separate agreements with relation to specific funding of programs and so forth, there was a desire to recognize a sharing of funding to help support those municipal services supporting these properties. And in that spirit, the agreement outlines a formula for recognizing total outstanding, or rather total exempt property taxation that is otherwise foregone by the town, also recognizing the total by the county, netting those two amounts out, which resulted in a net deficit for the town. And then further looking at an estimated service area around the town, estimating where county citizens may use the town as a hub or main support area and attend functions at those type of properties. So again, the formula was expanded to estimate the number of county residences within that mapped area, and then using a factor of ultimately 2 persons per residence as a proxy for estimating the county population that may access those services. And then ultimately that worked out to a percentage of 35% of that area being the county's portion of responsibility, and recognizing within the committee that much of this was based on estimates. That then led to agreement to change that 35% figure to 32.5%. And then ultimately a dollar figure was calculated from that. And much of this is collected within section 3 of the agreement. And then ultimately the amount that was calculated as a county contribution towards the town in recognition of these properties in the tax foregone was $406,644 annually for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Any questions or comments with regard to the Community Support Services Agreement? Councillor Lang?
I guess I'd just like to say for the public that may be listening, that this Community Support Services Agreement essentially replaces what used to be called the Revenue Sharing Agreement, and that there now is a mathematical formula to calculate the dollars that we arrived at, rather than just an arbitrary number as in the past.
Yes, certainly, and a process to recognize what it is that we are jointly sharing between the two municipalities, and recognizing that for the folks who live and work and recreate in this area, there are no lines or borders on the map. They simply utilize the services and the properties as they may need to. So that is what this encapsulates in my mind. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Hagan?
Nope.
Okay. If there's no more questions or comments, and thank you for that very thorough description of what this particular agreement encapsulates, Mr. Hagan. So the motion that we're looking for is that council approves Clearwater County entering into the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Community Support Service Agreement effective January 1st, 2021, and authorizes execution by signature of the Reeve and interim CAO. Just looking, Councillor Lougheed? Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. That brings us to item 3.3. Mr. Hagan, perhaps you'd like to lead off, and I see Ms. Haggart is here as well to help us out. This is a very exciting time today because it looks like we have our Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework bylaw.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reeve Laird. This represents the final intermunicipal collaboration framework agreement involving Clearwater County. This one being with the town of Rocky Mountain House. This is an accomplishment for both municipalities to reach this point. Given that, I will turn it over to Christine Haggart, Director of Emergency and Legislative Services, to provide some more details on this.
Ms. Haggart.
Good morning, Reeve Laird and Council. Thank you very much. As Council is well aware, intermunicipal collaboration frameworks, or ICFs, are mandatory under the Municipal Government Act and must be established between Clearwater County and each of the municipalities that share a common boundary with us. Currently, Clearwater County has 12 effective ICFs that we've completed since 2019 with our neighboring municipalities, and this will make lucky number 13. The purpose of the ICF document, just for background for those listening at home, is the process is used by the two municipalities to coordinate the design, delivery, and funding of services that may be used by residents of both municipalities. It is meant to foster stewardship and efficient use of resources, funding, facilities, volunteer base, etc. The ICF documents the relationship that is developed between the municipalities over the many years as neighbors and partners in some services, and it begins in inventorying the services that are currently delivered through a shared approach. It then provides tools and guidance on how to manage the relationship in the future. This includes such items as standing committee to coordinate efforts and negotiate new and updated arrangements for sharing of services. It also includes processes for putting forward proposals if necessary and working through any areas of disagreement. Highlights of the ICF include no set term for the framework. This form of agreement must be in place at all times as it's legislated, and a formal review is scheduled based on this current ICF every 4 years, but earlier or later review are allowable should both the councils agree. ICFs need to cross-reference intermunicipal development plans if they are applicable. That's a mandatory companion document to the ICF. And currently the town and county already have in place an IDP that was penned in 2007. And so that meets the legislative requirements of this ICF process. Creation of the Intermunicipal Collaboration Committee, made up of the Reeve Mayor of the town councils and the county councils, and 2 chief administrative officers as the main group for discussions when negotiating issues or any kind of responsible for making recommendations to the 2 councils as part of the ICF process for any of those agreements that need to be amended and or new shared services. The ICF also provides a process for each council to put forward the discussion for those new services or new capital projects and assessing those proposals. It's a venue to assess the proposals. ICF also provide a dispute resolution process with graduated steps, starting at open discussion, moving to mediation, then moving to arbitration if necessary. ICFs also include parameters for contents under new agreements and how to update existing agreements. And it also includes an implementation schedule to guide the ICC committee and councils in the first few years following the adoption of the ICF on areas of mutual interest for those new service areas or updates to existing service agreements that I mentioned earlier. So just a little bit of background on this town-county ICF. We started the process back in January 2019 with the formation of a committee of town and county representatives with the assistance of a consultant, Craig Teal from Parkland Community Planning Services. The committee surveyed existing agreements between the county and the town and discussed a long-term vision relating to service delivery. From there, a draft ICF document was created and reviewed by administrations as well as the committee. The committee then met again several times in 2021 to finalize the attached draft ICF for their respective councils' consideration. And at their last meeting on April 16th, which was just this past Friday, the committee met and made final amendments to the ICF and recommended their respective councils approve the draft that's being provided to council today at the April 20th meeting. Just an item of note, the ICF does not alter any existing funding frameworks nor commit the county or town to any specific funding formulas or amount of funding moving forward. Any existing or new agreements are updated and created, may be established and changed based on the discussion of the parties at a later time. And just one more note for council, it is expected that our partner in this ICF, the town, will similarly be providing readings of their companion bylaw at their regular council meeting, which is later this afternoon. So I'll just go back to the recommendations in the ICF process, that council give first reading of bylaw 110621 to adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework. And then from there, subsequently, second reading, permission for third, and then third reading if council so chooses. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments with regard to the Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework? Councillor Lang?
So Ms. Haggard, I was looking at the cemeteries and I realized that some of the cemeteries are singular when I'm wondering if they should be plural. For example, Nordegg, there's 3 that I know of, and Alexo, there's more than one.
Absolutely, Councillor Lang. I'll just, and I don't know, Tracy, if you can switch it over to look at the Chrome settings, so we can just pull up the listing of cemeteries where it's noted on the county's website. I don't know if that shows on the live stream though. I can. Sure. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. And on page 156 of 166 of council's package is where Clearwater County's cemeteries are listed now within the ICF document, just as a reference point. And then we'll also, Tracy Lynn's just moving that over to the live streaming. Are we good? Excellent, thank you. So just wanted to point out for council that Clearwater County has a location map for some of the cemeteries within the region. If I click on that, PDF pops up, and as Councillor Lang mentioned, there are multiple burial spots in different areas within the county, and I believe if my pointer is showing up on live streaming, the Nordegg one shows that there's 3 crosses there. So even though the word cemetery is being used in the document, that might mean multiple burial locations. So just wanted to make that clarification. I'm not sure if we need to amend the draft ICF to reflect that, but if council so chooses, we could certainly make that recommendation. That would be a very minor administrative change that we could definitely take care of if wished for.
Councillor Lang?
I'm good with the map. I'm not sure how the rest of council feels, but they are all identified, so that's good.
I don't see anybody making any objections. I think we're all good to move forward.
Excellent.
And thank you for clarifying where these cemeteries are, and then recognizing that it might only be one name or listed, but we know that there's multiple in some of these locations. Councillor Lang?
Sorry, I just see a spelling error under Alexo Cemetery, the Y is missing.
Absolutely, we can make that administrative change after council to make sure that that Y is added. Thank you for that. If I may as well, the draft ICF from 2019 to the 2020 version that council sees before them today also includes all of the previous agreements that Mr. Hagan had mentioned and council approved for endorsement. So that was the update that was required to be included in that ICF in part, and certainly now those are all listed there as well as part of the inventory.
So my understanding is, and for clarification, this is the snapshot in time as of this week. This is what
Absolutely.
we currently have.
Yes, that is correct. It is indeed a snapshot, and as things change in the future, the ICF can be looked at again as well, but they're not necessarily tied to each other, if that makes sense. So it's an inventory of what we have today so that future councils and administration know their starting point and how they can improve and share services amongst the region.
For me, I've seen this as sort of a glossary of documents.
Absolutely.
So if there's no other questions, we'll go through the process for this bylaw. The first motion is that the council gives first reading of bylaw 1106-21 to adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework. Deputy Reeve Vandermeer.
Very pleased to motion first reading.
All right, those in favor? That is carried 7-0. If we have no other concerns or questions, we're looking for council to give second reading of bylaw 1106-21 to adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework. Councillor Lang. Those in favor? That is carried 7-0. To move on to third reading, we would need to give permission of that. So we're looking that council gives permission to have all three readings of bylaw 1106-21 to adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework. Councillor Hoven.
I would move permission.
Those in favor? That is carried 7-0. The last is that council gives third reading of bylaw 1106-21 to adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework, and I would dearly love to give that particular motion. Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. 7-0. That is landmark. I believe that is our last ICF, if our counterparts provide the same process. And by Friday, we should be able to sign this off. Are there any other documents or discussion points that we need to discuss? Very well. Just by way of reminder, our intent is to be signing all of these documents on Friday, April the 23rd at 11 o'clock. We plan on live streaming from our council chambers, and we look forward to creating a joint press release with our partners. With that, we look to adjourn the meeting at 11:31. Councillor Duncan, those in favor? That is carried 7-0. Thank you very much to administration for all your efforts.